A lot of people think it's normal to become frail. Well, it's very common and it's very predictable, but it's not normal because it's avoidable for a vast majority of people. Unless you have some sort of a muscular or neurological disorder, your body can retain high levels of function even into your hundreds. And once people accept that and recognize that I don't have to become frail just because I'm getting older, I can do things that can not only prevent it, but reverse it.
Welcome to the Sock Drawer Podcast, where life is messy, but we always find meaning in it. Every week, we pull out the stories, the lessons, and the hidden gems. And then we ask the big question, keep it or kick it? If you're ready for real talk, brave steps forward. I'm your host, Lisa Begley, and you're listening to the Sock Drawer Podcast. Let's jump right in. Hello and welcome, Sock Drawer family. Today's episode, it is a gift. And if you've ever wondered what it really means to age with vitality, purpose, and possibility and not decline, you're going to love this conversation. My guest today is Kay Van Norman, one of the most respected voices in healthy aging and the creator of the Vitality Portfolio. And we'll talk more about that later. A framework, though, that it doesn't give you, it flips everything we've been taught about aging on its head. She's helped senior living communities across the country build cultures of well-being. She's directed the Kaiser Institute on Aging, and she has spent decades bringing research, storytelling, and human connection into the world of reinvention after 50. This is not an episode about aging gracefully. It is an episode about aging brilliantly. Kay, welcome. And I just have to tell you, as someone who's worked with women and men from time to time who are in their second, third, fourth chapters of life, everything about your work, as I was reviewing everything, it just felt like a breath of fresh air to me. Like your message that vitality is something we build, not something we lose. It's just exactly the kind of reinvention our community thrives on. And I'm so excited to dig into all that with you today. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for having me. I was really tickled to see your work, too, because it's so nice to have people that are doing complementary work and trying to reach the audience with the positive messages. And it has been a really fun journey. It's been 27 years, 28 years, something like
Amazing.
that I've been in this field. And it's nice to really start seeing some major change at the way people approach aging.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be part of it and talk to
Well,
you
I'm
through.
excited to dive in with you. And my first question, it kind of touches on what you just mentioned. Like you've been in this industry for so long. When did you first realize, because you were young, right? When you realized this, right? So when
Yeah.
did you first realize the aging narrative in America was broken or at least incomplete? I guess that maybe broken's not a great word, but.
Yeah, I was in my 20s when I first started doing some work around the whole idea of healthy aging and really focused a lot on exercise first, because that's kind of where I was trained. I have a master's in physical education and health. I guess for me, I had a real close relationship with both my grandparents and my both sets of grandparents. And I really started looking at the differences in how one group was aging compared to the other. And it was just very interesting to me to start digging into that. When I started doing my master's degree thesis, that's when I started really digging into that and wanted to do a 10-week exercise program for my thesis, pre and post, and, the exercise.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because right in the middle of that, I switched gears because the dance teacher at the university took a year's leave and wanted me to take her place. So I did that. So I taught dance at the
Amazing.
university for almost, I guess it was 8 years, but still was very interested in this topic. And so it wasn't until I was, I think I was 30, that I took over a program called Young at Heart, which was an exercise program for older adults based at the university. That, interestingly enough, was actually based off of my research project that I never did, but I had it in my drawer. And this woman by the name of Amanda came to me one day and said, "I hear you have something about older adult exercise." I said, "Yes." And I just gave her the project. So she ended up starting that program from that project, which was kind of a fun. And then I came back and took it over like 10 years later, which was very interesting.
Amazing.
But I think one of the big changes in my perspective happened when my first book had been published, Exercise Programming for Older Adults. It was all designed around exercise. And I was sitting in a National Council on Aging board meeting, and they were talking about getting the government to spend millions of dollars to remove barriers to physical activity for older adults. They're talking about costs and transportation and accessibility, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I finally stood up and I said, if those were true barriers, wouldn't we have 100% participation in senior living where none of those barriers exist? I mean, it's
Mm.
right down the hall, it's free, qualified instructions, accessible, all
Yeah.
that. And the average rate of participation in physical activity programming in senior living is around 20%. And so, I mean, I
That's
remember them all
surprising.
look at me like I was, speaking a different
Really?
language. And then they
Yeah.
went back talking about getting the government to spend millions of dollars. But for me, I'm like, something very different is going on here. And so that's when I really started looking into the 6 dimensions of wellness, the idea that, yeah, you can be really physically fit and then be a mess in every other dimension of your well-being.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of work with senior living on that. And then I'd see these wonderful, quote, really expansive wellness programs, and you still only have 20 to 30% involvement. So I started looking at behavior change and what really happens in behavior change. And so did a lot of work on the whole stages of change, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And then really kind of stumbled into the whole concept of ageism and what that does to people's belief systems around aging and how their beliefs drive behaviors and outcomes. And so
Okay.
that's really kind of where I've landed, this whole mindset around aging and
Yeah.
expectations around aging. And how do you change those like aging scripts in your brain to start really doing the things that are necessary to help you age as vital as possible?
Yeah. I love that. And you've said many older adults along those lines don't struggle with aging necessarily, but they struggle with the story they've been told about aging. All of us, myself included. So, what have you found that looks like in real life in your work with them now? Like, what have you seen kind of transition out in the
Oh,
real world?
one of the things that really always excites me is when I'm talking to people about this topic. And one of the things that seems to hit people really hard
Yeah.
is when I talk about the difference between frailty, like for example, a lot of people think that it's normal to become frail. Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
very common and it's very predictable, but it's not normal because it's
Mm,
avoidable for a vast majority of people. Unless you have some sort of a muscular or neurological disorder, your body can retain high levels of function even into your hundreds. And so that to me is one of the most hard hitting pieces of information. Once
love
people
that.
accept that and recognize that, you know what, I don't have to become frail just because I'm getting older.
Yeah.
I can do things that can not only prevent it, but reverse it. Even if I'm at a point where I'm, having trouble getting up out of the chair, I'm just barely getting around and in a lot of pain. I mean, the great news is that there's a ton that you can do to change that trajectory. And so
So
that to me is
true.
the most exciting thing, to be able to help people of all the things that can rob you of independence.
Hmm.
Frailty is one of the most preventable.
Interesting. Now, and do you feel like they would have to start early on to do that? Or I mean, can people in their 70s, 80s who are already frail, right, to coin the phrase, or
Yeah.
feeling frail, is there
Yes.
a way to reverse that feeling, to reverse that situation and be able
Yeah.
to rebuild the strength?
Absolutely, which is super exciting. They did a study, gosh, back in the 90s, 1990, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was with 100 nursing home residents. And these were frail older adults aged 78 to 96, I think. Multiple chronic conditions, all the things you would expect for people that are in a
Mm.
nursing home. And they did a 10-week strength training program with them, high intensity strength training. And the average improvement was over 100% improvement. People who had been walking with walkers that were able to get up and walk with canes, people who were in wheelchairs were able to walk with walkers. It was a dramatic change. And the first time that it showed that regardless of how deconditioned a person is, the body will respond. And so that's really exciting news. But the thing that's kind of depressing about that, we've known that since the 90s. And yet the average person walking down the street doesn't recognize that even if they have lost a lot of function, they can reverse that. They can regain their function and their strength. But you've got to work at it. You've got to make a decision to do it, and you've got to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, how do we debunk that, right? That brings us back to the myths. What myths would you say? Like, I'm getting older, that, it's just how it goes, kind of a thing. What myths do you most want to dismantle for people, let's say in their 50s and 60s and beyond?
I think that the myth that I'd really like people to get rid of is that somehow it's luck or genetics that is going to carry them through and to be functional throughout their whole life. That somehow it's just going to be by magic that they retain this high level of function. And the fact of the matter is, they used to tell us that it was genetics. A big portion of your well-being had to do with genetics. But now we know that it's less than 20% of the impact on your longevity and your health. That it's lifestyle factors that are far and away more important than any of your genetic factors. So, I mean, for that, again, for the vast majority of people, if you have some sort of a disease, genetic disease process, that's a different thing. But just the average person, it's so much more lifestyle than it ever was genetics. And so I think we had that message early on, and it's like, well, then it's only the lucky people who get to live with high function through their whole lifespan. But that's not the case. So if people can really process that and realize, you know what, it's my choices. It's my daily choices compounded over time that impact my longevity more than anything else, and your health span more than anything else. I think that's a very hopeful message. So
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes. So 1000% I agree with that. And I'm just thinking about my own kind of scenario and the things I tell myself, because the things we tell ourselves, and I tell myself, it's so common to just say, oh, I'm getting old. Oh, I'm getting old. Just that sort of nonchalant comment. Or I'll say, like, my grandmother lived to 98 on my mom's side. And to your point, I use the genetics piece of that, like, oh, I might get lucky, because my grandma had great health right up until 98, like, so it's funny how we're kind of conditioned. What would you say to someone like me that says that to themselves all the time and just kind of has that mindset? How do you make the shift?
I always like to talk to people about kind of examining what are those aging scripts running in your brain and where did they come from? So that one of your aging scripts is that you could live, to be healthy. That's a good aging script to have in your brain. But then what are some of the other aging scripts? Is it, well, you can't really expect to feel really great when you're in your 70s and 80s? Is it, well, if this is happening to me, it's because of my age and not because of my lifestyle? I mean, I think it's really important to just really sit down and examine those aging scripts and where they come from. Because none of us age in a bubble. We age in family. So, our stories around family aging. We age in community. What's your community like? Is there a lot of very active older adults that you see all the time or not? And then you age in culture, which our culture is very ageist and has been for a very long time. And so you age in all of those things. You don't age in a bubble. So it's a matter of trying to figure out, okay, what is my community telling me about aging? What is my family telling me about aging? Then also, what is research telling me about aging? Are you stuck back in the 90s where they didn't know much about healthy aging? Or are you really paying attention to the actual research, not to the miracle cures about aging? Yeah. Because I can tell you, after so many years in this industry, it really is about your daily choices compounded over time. Yeah. Which is both a very comforting thing and also kind of a depressing thing sometimes when you think about when you go through your daily and weekly and monthly habits. I think it's really important to look at them and say, which ones are giving me the best chance of living well throughout and with vitality through my whole lifespan, and which ones are actually detracting from that, which ones are
Yeah.
actually pulling away this kind of bank account or whatever. And I think I mentioned to you the vitality portfolio, and you mentioned it, and that really is based around the concept of a financial portfolio. If you think about it, most people are comfortable with the idea that if they want to have financial security, they have to make a plan, financial
Yeah.
plan, they have to balance their financial assets, and then they have to make regular deposits.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with this vitality portfolio. You have to make a vitality plan. And
Yes.
then you balance, I call the vitality assets, the core assets of ageless thinking and resilience, the wellness assets in the six dimensions of health, and then the functional assets of strength, mobility, and endurance. And then you have to make deposits. You can't just say, okay, now I know, and I'm going to,
Exactly.
think myself well. No, you have to actually make deposits. And it doesn't have to be giant deposits. It has to be consistent, small deposits throughout your life.
Such a powerful portfolio idea. Where did it come from? Like when did you first decide, you know what, aligning it with this and this is what this is how I'm going to put it together?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure exactly when that happened, except that I started recognizing while working with senior living, again, the idea that there was all this stuff that was available to people to
Yeah.
do, and yet so few were taking advantage of it in all the different dimensions. And I thought, how can I build a pathway for people and keep it really simple and really direct and something they can relate to? And for some reason, I think I was going to speak to a group who brought me in. They were Financial Planning Association, and I think that first sort of triggered that for me. It's like, well, what if I put it into terms they understand? And then I
Yeah.
really started building it out, and it seemed to make sense to people. And so then I really started building it out over about a 6-year period.
That is so good. And you've helped entire senior living communities shift from illness management or sick care, right? To
Yes,
to a wellness culture. What does
right.
that transformation require? Like what do you have to bring to the table in order to help them do that?
I think one of the first things is there had to be a complete shift in senior living from this mindset of move in here and we'll take care of everything for you. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at advertisements from, 15, 20 years ago, it was all about, oh, get rid of all the responsibility in life and move in here and we'll take care of all your needs. And, then these communities after, 5 or 6 or 7 years, they would bring me in and they're like, people won't do anything for themselves. And you're like,
Yeah.
and I'll pull out their marketing materials and say, you told them to move in here and you would do everything for them. And so
Yeah.
you get advertised and marketed for the exact people that you have. And
Ugh.
so really trying to make that shift, it's really about helping people understand that you have to have a culture of well-being, that everybody is willing to play their role and play their part. And
Ugh.
it's about a culture of mutual social support. It's a culture of here's opportunities, but it's your responsibility to take advantage of them. And this is a very different dialogue. And I tell you, they've had a hard time because a lot of them are really stuck in the hospitality model.
Yeah.
And in fact, the speech I just did at the International Council on Active Aging conference was all around this concept of, all right, you have these, fabulously developed wellness programs, but what are you doing to create that culture of well-being where it's a shared responsibility for a
Yeah.
culture of well-being. And so it's been a slow process, I got to say,
I am
but
sure. I am
yeah,
sure there is such a stigma around senior living homes, right? I worked for several years. I worked as a director of not operations, but like upkeep, right? Maintaining the safety and beautification, I'll say,
yeah.
of these senior homes. And, walking into a senior home, there's so much stigma that goes with it. And I just didn't love it. I didn't love it at the time when, the way people talked about it. Speaking of culture, I felt like that was a struggle. And you've got a long road ahead, but it's such a beautiful thing, I would say, to share and to watch people transform their lives, especially aging people, to be able to have a better quality of life. Do you recall or can you share a story of a community or a resident who embraced Vitality Portfolio? And then what changed once they embraced that? What transformation did you see?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite personal ones was I was speaking at an assisted living community, and I was talking about strength and power and the ability to regain it. And a woman came up after the talk, and she was using a walker and she was crying. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yes, but I realized after today that I didn't think I was going to be able to see my grandkids for Christmas anymore because I can't make it up their stairs. But now I think maybe I can." And I was like, "Yes." I mean,
My
that was just,
gosh.
I mean, it really made
That's
me
a
feel.
win.
It was a huge win because in that community had this wonderful Kaiser equipment, which is a pneumatic resistance that's great for anybody of any age because it's
Yeah.
all, it's the resistance you can increase by 1 pound at a time and all this stuff. So it's perfect. But they hadn't been really using it that much. And
Mm,
so she did mount a strength training program. She was able to climb stairs and go see her grandkids for Chris. And so, I mean, that was my
that's
favorite,
amazing.
personal
Yeah.
story. And as far as a community in embracing the vitality portfolio concept, I love that. Yeah, there was a community in Virginia, and we were doing the whole vitality portfolio thing, and people did the online course, and then we implemented a bunch of stuff in the community. There were like little table tents on the dining tables that would give just a little
Yeah.
tidbit of information because I'm really all about micro opportunities.
Mm,
If you can, in a community, it's so much about building those micro opportunities that help people move into action to attend a class or something. Because you can have all the classes and stuff in the world, but if people are not in that stage of change, if
yeah.
they're not in that action stage of change, it's all just for people who've gone through the action stage. So you have to build those baby steps into action. And so the same thing applies to individuals. If you're having trouble getting started, if you just keep saying to yourself, this is something I need to do, should do. First of all, I have a friend who always says, don't should all over yourself.
Yeah. I love that. That's that.
But it's the idea that take tiny actions. Take,
Yeah.
like, you're standing and talking on the phone, or if you're on the phone, stand up. Some one-legged, balance stands.
Yeah.
Do some, ankle flexions. If you're sitting down, just do some ankle flexions.
Yeah.
We had a whole series of exercises I called my seesaw exercises, which was an acronym for seniors exercising effectively while sitting around waiting, just for fun. And
Yeah.
it did remind people to, if I'm just sitting there waiting for something, do something with your body,
Hmm.
ankle flexions, do some, hand strength stuff, do something, shoulder shrugs and relax, do some things
Yeah.
that move your body.
And that says to me that this is doable in any level of community or senior living care
It is.
facility at any level. I love
At
that.
any level, exactly.
Yeah.
It's also
What do you
doable at home.
at home? Yeah. Before you even get to that point, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Nobody says I want to grow up and move into a senior living community when I'm 80. People want to be
Yeah.
independent. And so I always find it interesting that people will, if you ask people, okay, I'll give you $1 million and all you have to give me is your functional independence.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't take that, but you give it away every day by
Yeah.
not doing something to retain it. And so I think
Mm.
that's, it's just important to align your values with your actions.
I love that. You give it away every day by not taking those steps.
Taking the
So,
step.
Kay, let me ask you, what do you see now, so far where you're at in your journey with the Vitality portfolio? What do you see as the biggest sort of predictor of positive aging and reinvention happening?
In the research is really saying that it has so much to do with mindset. I mean, if you look at, I don't know if you're familiar with the Blue Zones research that
Hmm.
they did research all around the world at places that people live to be 100 plus years old, on a regular basis. And they started trying to find out, of course, everybody wants to know, what should I eat? How much should I exercise? They want all of these
Yeah.
things, but it's more interconnected. There's no one magic bullet. But what they did find is that in areas where people just moved on a regular basis constantly, it wasn't that they went to the gym 3 days a week. It's just that in their everyday life, they moved a lot.
Yeah.
They were gardening. Maybe it's in a third world country where they had to work a lot harder just to be warm and to be fed and whatever. That had a huge difference. And
Mm.
nutrition, it was all over the board. But one of the things I thought was really fascinating is that it had so much to do with the strong social connections. So whatever it was you were eating, you're with a group of people, you're connected, it's just that idea that we are social creatures that are
Yeah.
intended to be connected and not just, I mean, you can be in a room full of people and be lonelier than you are by yourself. So
So
it's
true.
not about proximity as much as it is about connection. What
Yeah.
connects you to others? What, what are you involved in? What is your sense of purpose? That's another huge one.
Mhm.
Regardless of challenges, what purpose do you have when you wake up in the morning? What gets you going in, day?
Yeah. Whether you're 20 or 80 or 90, it doesn't matter. I agree with that so much. I love hearing you say that. And for somebody, what would you say to somebody who's listening who wants to reinvent their next chapter? Where do they start?
Think, first of all, to kind of reevaluate yourself, really give yourself a good hard look and not a critical look, because I think we're so good at criticizing ourselves and saying, oh, I
Yeah.
should do this and I should do that. And, what's wrong with me? But really just look and maybe do that evaluation first of what are those aging scripts? Actually sit down and write it out. What are
Yeah.
those, what am I, what are the assumptions I've made about aging based on family, based on community, based on culture? What are those expectations? What are those scripts running in my head? And then you have to
Hmm.
kind of shine a light on them and say, is that true? Like that idea that it's normal to become frail and lose muscle tone and lose, muscle mass and strength and flexibility. And if you hold that up to the light, that is absolutely 100% false. And there are thousands of studies that prove that's false. One of
Mm.
my favorite slides that I use in speeches is it's a cross section of thigh muscle. And so the top one, it shows the bone in the middle and then the muscle mass and then the fat mass on the outside. And the top one is a 36-year-old triathlete and has lots of muscle mass and almost no fat. The second one is a 76-year-old sedentary man, and you see a very small muscle mass with a lot of fat. And you might expect that if you think that age causes that decline in muscle. But the third one is a 82-year-old triathlete, and his muscle mass is exactly the same as the 30-some-year-old triathlete.
Wow.
And so the same, big muscle mass, almost no fat. And so that proves that it's not age that causes that decline, it's inactivity. So again, super positive message, because maybe I'm, really have not taken care of my muscles, but you can, and it will change. Your muscle mass will change. And that's pretty exciting.
That is exciting. And I love that. I would love to see that visual. That
Yeah,
would be so
I'll
impactful,
share that.
Kay. Thank you. Yes. So what are two or three, what would you say? What are two or three vitality deposits
Okay.
that anybody could
Okay.
make in a single day?
So one of them would be if I am doing the dishes or whatever, standing at the
Yeah.
sink, stand on one foot and balance, because we lose, people lose balance if they don't practice it. So you could stand on one foot and then stand on the other. You could bend your knees. You could bend your leg up to the back, to bring your heel towards your buttocks. So just using those muscles in the legs. So that's one. Another is make a list of those people that you want to stay connected to in your life. And make sure that you're making deposits into that connection every single day, week, whatever. So you might have 5 people you really want to stay connected to. Maybe once a week, you can just send a text, and people say,
Yeah.
oh, I just don't have time to get in a big text stream or whatever. Just say, I'm just heading out the door. I just was thinking of you. I wanted to say hi. I hope all is well. Okay. You don't have to get stuck into a big stream if you don't want to, but keeping that door open and putting those deposits into that social connection. And then the other one would be the emotional dimension. And I think that sometimes people get so focused on what's wrong in their life as opposed to what's right in their life. I
Oh,
think making a conscious choice, if something irritates you or whatever, that you stop for just a minute and maybe even physically turn your body to look the other direction and say,
uh-huh.
what's one thing I'm grateful for today? I mean, the gratitude practice is so important, and it doesn't take a big,
Powerful.
you don't have to have a fancy journal, none of that. It's just taking the time to look for things you can be truly grateful for.
Yeah.
So I think those 3 things I think could make a huge impact for people.
So good, Kay. I have literally picked up the gratitude challenge. I have a board back here that I write on every week, a gratitude section. But to your point, I love the idea of actually speaking it out loud, because you can write it, but when you speak it out loud, even if it's just one statement of gratitude each day, it's so powerful. So powerful. I love
It
that.
really is. And it's something I'm gonna make a confession to you here on something.
Please.
Well, we just moved a little over a year ago. We moved from Bozeman to a lot smaller community, actually more acreage and a lot less people. And it was this big, huge move because we lived in the same place for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
And, we have horses and I mean, all that stuff. And so it was a big move. And I
Yeah.
found myself for the first time in my adult life, I was looking at the house thinking, okay, I don't like this about it. I don't like that about it. And comparing it to my, home for so many years,
Long time
had
home.
huge soaring ceilings and big windows. It was such an interesting thing to fall into a habit of looking at the negative instead of the positive just
Mm.
because of this huge disruption.
Uh-huh.
And for probably 40 years, I had always, taken my hot tea and sit down with a positive affirmation book or something like that and just kind of that's the way I started my morning. And I
Yeah.
found myself wandering around looking for my spot. It's like in my old house, I knew where my spot was. And it
Yeah.
was so strange to it's like, just pick a stupid spot. What's the big
Yeah.
deal? And you get
Yeah.
distracted I'd find that I'd go days and days without doing my gratitude and positive affirmation practice. And it changed the way I looked at the world. And I was
Yeah.
really embarrassed after about a month and a half that I had let all these great habits just sort of fall to the wayside because of a disruption. And it was a
Yeah.
big disruption, but it was a positive one.
Yeah.
So anyway, I have a lot more empathy for people, I think, than I did before in terms of making those changes because it's not always easy and it's not always a straight line. And I think the message
So true.
is just start each day and do one little thing, and just
Yeah.
attach. And I always say attach some new habit that you want to do to something you do on a regular basis. So if it's talking on the phone, if it's whatever it is, attach, like you're watching a program you like to watch, attach something to it. Maybe stand up and sit down 20 times, every, 20 minutes or something. Just attach something that you want to become a habit to something that is already a habit. And that helps, I think, make
That's
those.
a, that's a great idea. What would an example of that be? Like, let's say you do, I don't know. Let's say you have already do 10 minutes of meditation in the morning. Would an example of that be add on speaking a sentence of gratitude along
Yeah.
with that?
Or maybe at the end of that sitting quietly, do some sort of a big full body stretch and breathe
Mm,
or something just to kind of, move the body after you've been sitting still, then do something that just kind of energizes the physical body as well. Cause I think that's the balance is how do you balance the mind, body, spirit? And there's all these, dimensions of 6 dimensions, 7 dimensions, 8 dimensions. There's
yeah.
lots of models, but it really is all about the idea that we're not just a physical being and we're not just a
Uh-huh.
mental being, that it's all interconnected. And so
Uh-huh.
really trying to think about those ways to make deposits into those dimensions. In fact, I have so on my website, if people want to go to my website and go to the Ignite Personal Vitality tab, there's a download they can do it's just kind of an explanation of the Vitality Portfolio. It's a free
Mm-hmm.
download. And it has in there this wellness wheel that I ask people to draw their wellness wheel. So how many deposits are you making into your physical dimension, your emotional dimension, your
Yeah.
spiritual, your social, all that stuff? And it's actually, it's kind of like I always call it a wheel. It looks more like a piece of pie, because it's, you might have a little tiny slice of, your emotional dimension. You're not really putting much into that, or a
Yeah.
tiny little slice for your physical. But it's by
Mm-hmm.
drawing your wellness wheel and figuring out how many deposits you're making into each dimension, you can kind of get a sense of how balanced things are. Maybe you're missing a whole spoke on the wheel and you
For
need to
sure.
start thinking about that. So I think that's a good exercise, and that's in that download.
Okay. And
And
this
there's
your
also an aging,
website is, tell me again,
brilliantaging.com.
brilliantaging.com, listeners, brilliantaging.com. And this is where you can find the free resource and then check out the vitality wheel,
Yeah. To
the
go
wellness wheel.
go to the website and then go to the Ignite Personal Vitality, because there's a whole section for senior living, but this is the personal vitality section on the
Okay.
website. Just click into that and then there's numerous downloads
Perfect.
There's a chapter that I wrote in a book with Jack Canfield that talks about the Vitality portfolio. There's the Vitality starter toolkit, and that's what has the wellness wheel. It has an ageism questionnaire that
Mm,
gets people to start thinking about what are they thinking, saying, and actually doing about aging well. And I think that's a really valuable tool as well.
sounds great. That sounds great. Listeners, you heard it here. Let me ask you, Kay, what's giving you hope right now in the world of healthy aging and, and reinvention? What really is kind of inspiring you?
Well, I think it's podcasts like yours. There's a
Aw,
lot more people who are starting
thank you.
to say the same things. It's like, look, we don't have to be just drugged down this path that seems really, like a downward spiral. That's just not
Yeah,
necessary. So I love that there's more and more of that happening. There's definitely more recognition of how critical the social connection is for people
yeah,
their whole lifespan, and then the emotional well-being. I mean, and I think that sometimes people look at, whole person wellness and they think, well, I'm never going to be perfect in all these. Well, it's not about perfection at all. In
yeah.
fact, when I think about the physical dimension, it's not about how physically fit you are, it's how physically competent you are. So, for what example, there's a young man by the name of Kyle Maynard. Anyway, born with no legs, and he, was able to travel the world on his skateboard of all things, getting on
Mm,
planes, and going to third world countries, and doing all this stuff.
amazing.
So his physical dimension, you couldn't call it perfect because he's missing legs, but his physical competence is off the chart. What he can do with what he has is amazing. And so I think of that in all the dimensions. What can you do with what you have? So it's no
Hmm.
longer is it an off ramp to say, well, I have arthritis in my knee, or I have this, or I have that. It's like, wait a minute, think about young people with disabilities. They're given all sorts of resources, tools, and encouragement to overcome those and live fully in spite of them. But when you look at what happens with older adults that have some kind of a challenge or disability, they're often only given tools and resources to cope with that challenge.
Mm,
Think about the difference between those two concepts of overcoming versus coping.
mm,
So I think that is so critical when you are faced with a challenge.
yeah.
Instead of just saying, well, now that I have this, I can't do X, Y, Z. You need to look at some of the examples of young people who are fed this resilience training and what they can accomplish because of the mindset, and say to yourself, okay, what can I accomplish with the same mindset?
That's
So,
exactly what I was going to say. It just listening to that story of Kyle Maynard and thinking what he was born that way. He needed to start out with a mindset that
right. Yeah.
continually encouraged him to build his life
Yeah.
not because of it but in spite of it,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
disability. So wow, that was so powerful. And I'm again, you guys listeners, brilliantaging.com, and all of your resources are in there. Any questions, I'm sure you can reach out to Kay there, and she'll get back to you on that. So thank you, Kay. Anything else that you maybe we didn't touch on before we dive into our drawer dash? Is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know before we jump into that?
Yeah, I'd like to invite them to on that on my website, on that Ignite Personal Vitality tab. There is a link that takes you directly to the online course, and I would like to invite the Sock Drawer listeners. I'm going to put a code of socks 25 SOCKS 25 that you can plug in to get 25% off of the price of that
Amazing.
for your listeners. So I really invite you to do that. And if you have any trouble getting into it, just reach out to me. So you can reach out to me right on my website, and I'll be happy to help you through that.
Okay, that is so generous. Thank you so much, listeners. Socks 25. Go to the website, do the Vitality course. You will not regret it. It will be so powerful and beneficial for you. Us moving forward, age does not matter.
Correct.
Any age.
Not matter.
Wonderful.
Period.
Oh my gosh. Love it. Done. Full stop. Full stop. All right, Kay. So we're gonna move from transformation to connection.
Okay.
Welcome to the 60-second drawer dash. This is our thing. They're just quick answers, no overthinking it. Let's just open a few drawers and see what we come up with. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw some questions at you.
Okay.
What is one belief about aging you wish everyone over 50 would delete from their minds forever?
The concept of senior moment.
Okay.
You got to get
What
rid
is
of it. Been forgetting things your whole life. So why is it suddenly when you're a senior that it becomes that's a senior moment? That drives me
It's
crazy.
so good. I love that. It's true. I'm going to do that. I'm going to plug that in.
Get rid of
What
that
is,
out of your vocabulary.
because I say it myself. Oh, I'm having a senior moment. Okay. Get rid of it, listeners. What is one brave step you took recently that even surprised you?
Moving to this brand new community after 40 plus years in Bozeman. Well, I mean, that was a huge step, but it was something that we really wanted to get onto a bigger place and have more elbow room. And it was scary kind of at this stage in my life.
Yeah.
But we just did it. So I'm kind of proud of myself.
Good for you. Good for you. What's a wellness habit you swear by, but people don't expect?
I think it's letting go of an expectation. So if you do something for somebody, whether you provide them support, emotional support, money, whatever it is, do that without attaching it to a specific outcome. Because when you're attaching to a specific outcome, that leads to frustration because here you've done this thing for them and you can't believe they're not doing X, Y, Z. Just release expectation for your preferred outcome.
I love that. That's so good. What is one moment this year that you truly felt alive in?
It's going to sound weird, but my sons and I had ridden horses up to a canyon and they put in a trail camera to see what was moving through there. And this year, just about a month ago, I texted them and said, do you want me to get that camera? Because I was going to be back up in that area. They said, yes. And then when I got back, I climbed the tree, got this camera out, and then I got back and got their message. And then the new message, and it said, but Mom, you shouldn't be climbing a tree, blah, 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 blah. I was like, well, how did you expect me to get it? It's in the tree. I didn't climb it. But for some reason, that just made me feel really alive that I was climbing this tree and got this thing out. I don't know. It's kind of silly.
No, it's not. No, that's a great story. And that's exactly what we've been talking about this whole time is just, not having the mindset wrapped around,
Yeah.
I'm older, I can't do it. Like,
It never occurred to me that
putting that on you a little bit.
I shouldn't climb the tree. And these boys, I'm sorry, they've lived their whole life with me talking about anti-aging or anti-ageism kind of mindset. So it's like the little traitors, I just sent them poop emoji.
Little traitors. I love it. That is so funny. What's the most joyful thing you've added to your own vitality portfolio?
Most joyful thing. I think it's been I'm gonna start a class down here in the little community of Townsend on healthy aging and movement and dance and all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of using a dance type class for adults, movement class for adults to sort of bring in this whole kind of thing. So I'm excited about that.
Well, I'm excited. I want to stay. We'll stay connected because I want to hear how it goes for sure. What's a book, a quote, or maybe even a person, Kay, that shaped how you see aging?
Wow. A really great book is Age Rewind by Becca Levy, Levy. Excellent, excellent. She's a researcher on this whole mindset piece out of Yale University. Amazing research with a lot of practical stuff in there. So I definitely recommend that. The other one is called Unbreakable by Dr. Vonda Wright. Wright. Excellent, excellent book that really gives you the very specific details about what you have to do to keep your body healthy. Very good. Yeah.
And my last question, what is one thing you hope you're still doing at 95 years old?
Oh, that's an easy one. I hope I'm still doing backcountry horseback riding in Montana, going down impossible trails with my horse.
I was going to say climbing trees and getting cameras.
I've decided that time the boys come for dinner with their families, I'm going to be up in the apple tree as they drive up.
That I want video of that. That's going to be great. Well, Kay, so we've reached that moment in our episode that is our tiny dare moment. This is where you gift our listeners with one small action, something they can do today that helps sort of move them forward, move them toward vitality, well-being, reinvention. Keep it simple, doable, but they could start it today. What's your tiny dare?
I think so. We talked about before. When you're talking on the phone, stand up, do something with your body as you're talking on the phone. Every time you're on the phone, or even if you're texting, think about, or scrolling or whatever you're doing, stand up, sit down, stand on one foot, do something for your physical body.
I love that. So listeners, that is such a great, and so many of us don't do it. We're either, we're sitting in the passenger seat, or we're sitting on the couch, or we're sitting at our
Mhm.
desk, or we're laying in bed and we're just we're doom scrolling, or we're doing whatever. Just if you're gonna, that's actually, what I love about this, Kay? I love that is that we can align that with, because we spend so much time on our phone. I know everybody talks about, the trend is kind of talking about put down your phone, give
Yeah.
yourself peace. And I get that. But for those many of us, and I'm including myself here, that are on the phone a lot, that are checking emails, doing whatever it is you do on your phone, it doesn't even matter. The fact that you take that time and also align it with, like what
Mhm.
Kay said, of just simply standing up. I like the balancing. I'm going to start working on that when I'm doing dishes. The balancing, lift one foot and then lift the other foot, right? Just movement. Even if you just walk around while you're doing it, keep yourself safe. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah,
So
know
move.
your limits, but move. One thing that
Love
everybody
that.
can do is ankle flexions. And the reason it's so critical is
Mm-hmm.
that if you lose the ability to strongly flex your ankle, your walking gait starts to break down. Because if you think about, I used to do this demonstration all the time in speeches where
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing a normal walking gait, you should be able to walk on a board, right? You heel strike, push off, you're on your one foot for just a fraction of a second before you switch to the other. As
Yeah.
soon as you can't flex that ankle and reach out into a normal stride, you have to open up to keep that same base of support. So then you start having to land flat footed because you're opening out of the side. Pretty soon you've
Mm,
got this side to side. You've seen people kind of shuffle along.
yeah.
That is so indicative of fall, that the
Okay.
more abnormal your walking gait is, the more likely you are going to be to fall. So just that simple act of just doing ankle flexions all the time and stretching that ankles. And if women who've been in heels their whole lives and have shortened up that Achilles tendon and the muscles in the back of the leg, hugely critical for you to
Yeah.
solve that. Get
That
your
is,
shoes off and do some ankle flexions.
I love that. And you can get online and see that. Do you have that on your website as well?
See, that is in the on some there's some videos. There's
I
some
knew it would
videos
be.
on my website, and there is an ankle
Yes.
flexion one. Yeah.
So you guys, you can see this right. Just go to her website and check that out because it's so important. I just started taking Pilates about 4 or 5 months ago here, and I do it now I own a fitness studio, but it was more high impact strength training, weights, like moving and grooving, cardio, and it was awesome. And it was a great exercise. But I find now that just having this ability and we always start with like ankle flexions,
Mhm.
and we work on calf muscles, strengthening Achilles, hamstring, all of those things, hip flexors, all of the things that, are beneficial at any age, really, and I'm in class with, 20-year-olds to 80-year-olds, and it's just wonderful to see. So thank you so much for that. Kay, thank you for joining me today. Your work, gosh, such a powerful reminder that aging isn't a decline. It's actually a design. We should be thinking about it all the time. And the way that you blend your story, I think science and humanity, it just gives us all permission, I don't know, to really like step into our own chapter with
Yep.
intention and vitality, which I love. Your approach to the vitality portfolio feels like something every woman and man over 50, maybe even sooner, needs in their reinvention toolkit. So thank you for bringing so much hope and clarity to this conversation today. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And to our Sock Drawer family, if you love today's episode, share it with someone who you know needs a reminder that their best chapter absolutely is not past. And as always, take one brave step towards something really good today. Talk soon. All right, Sock Drawer family, that's a wrap on today's Drawer Dump. Big thanks to our guests for sharing their story and their heart with us. Until next time. Don't forget, life's too short for mismatched socks. Retire the ones with holes, inspire the ones that still shine. See you soon.